Nice to be here. Yeah, joining you today from Jamaica. Hi, everyone.
Anybody more distant than Jamaica out there? Anybody outside the DMV area? The DC, oh, yeah. Sarah, where are you? We're gonna get back to you, but where are you actually?
In Austin, Texas.
Oh, we didn't even know that, okay.
I'm on the Eastern Shore, but I guess that's technically the DMV.
You know, it expands. Oh, wait, so,
I don't know about that, but I think some lifetime Washingtonians would have issue with that.
It's Maryland.
I know.
But it's hours.
I'm pretty close to Delaware over there.
Exactly.
wait, so all right, so who else we have? We have Jamaica, which is definitely outside the DC area. Austin, which is definitely outside the DC area. Who else is outside of DC?
I think I saw the other Cynthia raise her hand. Yeah.
Yeah, Chicago.
Oh,
Chicago.
like really Chicago, Cynthia? Or are you gonna say you're like in Naperville and you're like
No, and I take your point. I have two homes, one in River North, right by actually the Chicago River, and one in Schaumburg. So I bounce between the two.
all right.
Yeah.
So where are you now?
Right now, I am in Schaumburg because it has a basement, and we have had tornadoes lately.
Oh.
This is something you don't think about in downtown DC is tornadoes.
I don't know. We're starting to have a few threats lately. So
Yeah.
well, that's 12:02. You think we should kick it off?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Why don't we do that? So, hello, I'm gonna share my
Everybody might want to mute themselves at this point.
and hopefully you can see it now. Did that work? Yes. Okay, good. So, hi folks, I am Bill Yoder, and welcome to this workshop. Today we're going to be focusing on networking and icebreaker techniques. We'll be doing some real hands-on work while also doing some networking and some icebreakers and some theoretical work. Want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to actually network with each other as well. Our speakers are going to be Dawn Ryan and Lee Gimple, who are both MAFN members. And I'll be co-hosting today with Mariana Belgorovich and Anne-Claire Francisi, and our graphic recorder will be Sarah Nuttall. So before we get into the meat of the presentation, I'd like to give you a quick overview of MAFN. Most of you are probably familiar with MAFN. Is there anybody, and I know Lee asked this a little while ago, but there's some more folks that have come on. If this is the first time you've come to a MAFN event, please drop a note in the chat box to introduce yourself. As you probably know, MAFN stands for the Mid-Atlantic Facilitators Network. It was founded about 20 years ago by facilitators for facilitators, because we thought we needed a place to share experiences, lessons learned, etc. And since then, it's evolved really into a really cool educational network and sharing network from facilitators rather. As you can see from this slide, we really have 4 overlapping missions, helping develop the profession, helping you develop yourself, developing our community, and helping you to develop your services. The benefits, in addition to the meetings like this one, include opportunities to grow and connect, the Find a Facilitator directory, which a lot of folks have found they get work for, and a lot of people in the community have found good facilitators through. And you can see the other things, as well as all of the past webinars are also available online if you're a member. You can join for $95 a year. I've been a member for about 20 years. Several other people here actually have been as well. Some of you may have come on while Cynthia was talking about that. One of the cool things about MAFN is it provides an opportunity for old timers and newcomers to learn from each other. And both old timers and everyone who's gotten involved in it finds it to be one of the best investments you can make. We're always looking for volunteers. I know that we were and have been looking for folks to join the board. We just had our board elections, but I believe there are still a couple of vacancies. So if you're interested, let us know. If you are interested in running a workshop, you have an idea for a workshop, there's an email to access that. And any other volunteering, if you're interested in co-hosting, etc., just you can send a text message or an email rather to the message indicated there. In terms of upcoming events, our usual year of presentations runs September through June, and this is the last event of the year. There will be, I know there's going to be at least one community of practice meeting in July, and there may be others. Those are for members only, and members of the community of practice will be notified about them, and they will also show up on our website. Online workshops will resume in September. Watch the MAFN website for announcements regarding what's coming up. And again, if you want to volunteer, please send an email to workshops@mafn.org. Couple of logistics thing. One is if you are logged on separately on your phone for audio, please do as it's instructed here to merge your audio and video. Click on the top left on I to find your participant ID and input that on the phone. We're assuming that everyone here is pretty familiar with Zoom, so therefore we're not giving sort of a basic tutorial on Zoom. Obviously, if this were a less advanced group, then we would do that. And the last thing is we're going to be doing a lot of breakout groups here, smaller breakout groups. And if you're uncomfortable with breakout groups, then send a text to Mariana in a private chat and let her know, and she'll leave you out. And also, if you're going to have to leave early from the meeting, before you leave, please send Mariana a chat so that she doesn't put you in a breakout group that's coming up. We don't want to end up with breakout groups of 1 or 2 people. That creates a little bit of a hassle. So we understand you may have conflicting schedule things. Just quickly introduce a few people. Our visual scribe today is Sarah Nuttall. She's new at this. She's has a bachelor in fine arts and works as an illustrator off and on for about 7 years. And recently, it's really only in the last year she's gotten involved in graphic recording. So looking forward to see what Sarah comes up with, and we all want to support her on that. And if you want to find out more about her or contact her, her email address is there, and or you can just send her a note at Sarah is Drawing Challenged. And these slides will be provided to everyone who attended after the workshop, so that you can get that. Our facilitators today are going to be Lee Gimple and Dawn Ryan, both MAFN members. Lee is the founder of Better Meetings. He has actually presented before with MAFN. He's a meeting trainer and designer, specialty in networking and connection building, especially with conferences and industry events. And you can see some of his bona fides there. And Dawn, most of you probably know, as she said before, she's been a MAFN member since the mid-90s. She's in Synergy Forces. I don't know, I may have copied that wrong, but I think she created Synergy Forces in 2005. She's an IAF certified professional facilitator and certified virtual facilitator and certified MBTI facilitator. She provides services for strategic planning, partnering, and proficient in qualitative and quantitative research. So with that introduction over, I am going to turn things over to Dawn and Lee.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, MAFN. I didn't want to be the first one to not forget mute here. Also, just quickly before we go on, Allison, I see you have your hand raised. Did you have a question before we move too far on here?
I am having a lot of technical difficulties. Every time I try to put something in the chat, Zoom closes on me, and I don't know why that is. I put my intro in the chat, and I was going to type in that I do have to leave a little bit early today, and as soon as I typed something in, Zoom closed out, and I've been kicked out like 5 times now, and I don't know what to do. And
is anybody else having that problem?
I don't know. I mean, I use Zoom all the time, so I don't know what the heck is going on. I've got a full signal. I've got a full charge.
I wonder if you should check to see if you need to update
Yeah.
Yeah, I would maybe if you drop out and come back in,
I'm
that
gonna
might work.
drop out and maybe reboot my computer and then re-update Zoom and cross my fingers. But I do have to leave by 2:45 for a 3 o'clock event. But I'm gonna try that and hope for the best. But if my chat doesn't
Yeah.
work, I
And
can
Jay
still
put
see
in the
this. I just can't seem to chat anymore.
Jay put in the chat that Zoom's struggling today. So
Okay, well, it's not just me then. Okay, well, I'm
All right.
gonna try to do that. So I'll be back hopefully pretty soon.
All right. Thanks,
Okay,
Nathan.
good luck.
I hope it
Keep
works
us posted.
out.
Thanks.
Okay, so the first thing, welcome, anyway, we're back. I'm Lee, that's Dawn, or that's Dawn. And first thing I want to do, Anne Claire, if you can bring up the squirrel scale for us, that would be awesome. Okay, we're going to start this way. If you can type into the chat, just take a sec to look at these squirrels. There's 9 of them. So if you feel like, the question is, how do you feel about icebreakers? Are you super excited about icebreakers? Are you ambivalent about icebreakers? Do you dislike icebreakers? So, you know, a 1, a 2, just quickly type into the chat how you feel about icebreakers. Give you a second to study all of the different squirrel faces here. All right, I'm going to give you 5 more seconds to think about it. Okay, so thank you for playing along here. I'm actually surprised that we got as many folks to chime in as we did. So the first point I want to make is like, yes, this is an icebreaker. And we just did something that often looks like what happens when we do icebreakers and we say, how are you feeling about this? Or what's your favorite food? And then we sort of like move on. And that was that moment. And I think it's often stuff like this that people roll their eyes over and go, do we have to say what kind of squirrel we are? So rest assured, the rest of what we're doing here today is going to be pretty different from that, right? So we appreciate, you know, knowing what kind of squirrel you were, but the next 2 hours is going to be pretty different. So we're just going to try and get that out of the way and frame kind of what we're not going to be talking about here in a way. So, you know, I think what we want to talk about is icebreakers and networking that sort of go hand in hand, that advance a conversation, that tie into what we're doing, that connect people in a way that's productive and germane to the work that we're doing here, right? So let's do something as we really start into the real meat of this and get away from the squirrels. Dawn, you want to have people do maybe a more thorough introduction of themselves here?
Sure. Well, and even though we asked the question of you know, we tied it in about being about icebreakers, sometimes people do an icebreaker just for the sake of doing one. So we just kind of demonstrated trying to connect it to the topic. So what we want to do now is we want you to type your name, location, and your organization in the chat, but wait to hit enter. So go ahead and type that in and we'll tell you when to hit enter. And Claire, if you could put in Lee and mine's examples so people know what they're going to be typing, but again, don't hit enter quite yet. And so I think everybody should be ready. So I'm going to count down from 3 and then I want you to hit enter at the same time. So 3, 2, 1. There you go. I like how Cynthia Pace needs no introduction. So here you've got a list of everybody here. And at the end of our time together today, you could save the chat and you now know who all the participants are if you want to reach back out to somebody. We could have had everybody find their LinkedIn profile, their website, and so on and so forth. But this is known as a chat storm. So this could be a way for you to collect a lot of information and not take up the time of a round robin going all the way around the room to find out everybody who's there. And doing it at the same time doesn't create any kind of examples where people try to one up each other and so forth. So, so what are we going to be talking about here today, Lee?
I thought you'd never ask, Dawn. So quickly so far, what have we done that's sort of icebreaker-ish, networking-ish? So first thing we did is just some of these quick hit interviews. We'll do more of those throughout the afternoon or the morning, depending on wherever you are. But just quick little call outs of who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing? What do you think about this? Right? To sort of share the spotlight. It's easier to engage with people if we've already, sort of seen them talk and we know who they are instead of just being a sort of wall of faces here, right? We did the squirrel scale, right? There's lots of things that fall into that kind of domain. And then we just did this chat storm, right? And so we're going to do a bunch of other things. We're going to do, we're going to sort of work through to more complicated formats and more, I think, immersive formats. So what are we talking about here? Icebreakers and networking that go hand in hand. And we're really going to talk about them being tied into the content that we're working in. If we're doing something that's strategic planning, it might be different than, a team building exercise or something like that, right? And I think a lot of this comes down to building trust and getting groups to come together and feel like they're in this thing together, whatever that thing is, instead of just saying, oh, I know that, Amy's favorite food is fried chicken or something like that, right? That doesn't necessarily move the conversation all that far, right? And knowing that this is a this is a very knowledgeable group of folks. I hope we're not talking down to you. I think icebreakers are one of these things that often is a small piece of a much bigger whole. We have sort of the luxury of 3 hours to talk about it today, to really dive into this stuff. And I think to pull out some ideas from, what you all do, what you've seen, what you've experienced, what you think works. And I hope that we're all better and smarter because of it at the end of this. So that's really the goal. We'll, share some of what we know, but we hope that everyone participates in this. I think overall, the idea is icebreakers and networking is something that's intentional. It's not just like, oh, we put out coffee and it'll just happen, right? But how do we advance this conversation in a facilitated way? And that's obviously why we're doing it here. And yeah, I think just as an overall background to why we're doing this, when we first started discussing this with Linda, it's the last session of this season for the MAFN workshops. And it tends to be a little lighter. We were thinking it was just going to be networking, but instead of just bringing people together and saying, well, just meet a bunch of people over the course of an hour, could we turn it into sort of a learning session? And then also have that networking piece where people on this call or this video get to meet each other. So that's what we're trying to do here today. That's what we are doing. Dawn, what are we not doing? What are we not talking about?
So several people will pull up the squirrel scale and just say, how are you feeling today? Or they may do 2 truths and a lie. And maybe those are good depending on the purpose of your session. But a lot of people will do an icebreaker just to check that box, like Lee was saying. So you need to make sure that any icebreakers you do or networking that you do is on purpose and that it's intentional. And so we're not talking about icebreakers just for the sake of doing icebreakers. And we don't want to do something that's just silly, like what's your favorite food? We talked about fried chicken a little while ago. And we talked about ways to, a round robin often in some cases makes a lot of sense for introductions depending on your group, but it takes up a lot of time and people want to get going on the work. So, think of other ways to bring the group together and, helping them get to know each other in a different way. And then you also don't want to just walk in and launch into the work. You kind of have to warm people up. That's why it's called an icebreaker. And so you can do that by making sure it ties in. And we're repeating ourselves about that. So, and people don't want to feel like the time on the icebreaker was not a waste of time. They want to make sure that they understand, oh, that's why we did that, or that got in my head in the space of what we're about to talk about. So, so Lee, what's next?
Trying to reply in the chat and I got caught. Okay, so we're actually going to try and do some of this where we go beyond the squirrel scale, where we go beyond the chat storm. And again, this is an audience that has seen this magic trick before, but we're going to do some actual networking. We're going to do some breakout rooms. This is impromptu networking or triad networking or whatever we want to call it. And what we're going to do is we're going to put you in little breakout rooms, but we're going to start small. We're going to start easy. just for a couple minutes with probably 3 people in a room. May not be totally balanced there. And what I want you to do when you're in that room is obviously introduce yourself if you don't already know that person that you're in there with, or people that you're there with. And then I want you to think about sharing a micro story, just like a 30-second, 1-minute story about how you met someone who's important in your life or significant in your life. Could be a work person, could be a spouse, whatever that is, right? Really short story. My name is Lee and whatever. For example, Dawn, do you have, can I put you on the spot? Do you have one that comes to mind?
Sure. I actually met Wayne Vick, who started Maffin, and he immediately said, why don't you, I'll mentor you. Why don't you come and intern at one of my sessions? And I loved it. And that's what got me into facilitation. So it was great meeting Wayne, and I was introduced to him by another Maffin member, which was Bill Olson. So that's my micro story.
Cool. So basically just do whatever Dawn did. That was perfect. You could lead this session, Dawn. Okay, so we're going to do that. Very simple, very easy, very short. Any questions before we put you in these breakout rooms and you actually get to talk instead of listen to us?
And I just want to confirm that once you're in the breakout room, you can open the chat again and you'll see the directions, which Anne Claire just posted.
Yeah. So we'll be doing it for 7 minutes. So basically gives you about 2 minutes per person, and just sort of make sure everyone gets a chance.
Yeah.
I think
So
that's
Mariana, are you ready?
Yep. I make this point all the time, and I know it's like not strange to everyone in this room, but it is amazing when you send people out to breakout rooms and they come back and they're like, I actually got to talk to people about stuff I care about instead of just watching the speakers. So I always love that. So earlier we mentioned, or at least we texted in there into the chat to get some paper. Hopefully you have some paper nearby, or if you want to just bring up a screen on your computer to type some notes. We're going to have you do this a couple times during the session. When we talk about networking, I think often what happens is we say, I met someone, I met Gina, right? I met Gina. It was great. We had an amazing conversation. And then we come back into the main room and then we just get into the flow of whatever is happening here. And we forget, A, that we met Gina and what we talked about, and that I was supposed to follow up and we were going to have coffee or something like that. So take about a minute here. Just write a note. Who did you meet? What did you talk about? We're not committing you to anything, but we want to just give you that space to do that. I think that's an important thing that we want people to think about. And while you're writing, if you have a story that you would like to share, or that you thought was interesting that you heard in the room, if you'd like to share that in a moment, we'll just ask for some volunteers. Okay. Hopefully you have at least a couple notes about great people that you met and great things that you talked about, and maybe some follow-up that you were promising to do. So, I think that's part of it. Is it's not just meeting people, but does it go somewhere, right? And I think that's part of what we want people to think about, and just to have that time and space to do that instead of rushing through everything, right? Okay, that said, volunteers, anyone want to share? We couldn't all be in all the rooms. Anyone want to talk about what you shared or what you heard?
I can share, since it's kind of a moment of silence over there. Usually I'm a shy person, so I share first. All right, so our group, we actually have 2 coaches. Well, I mean, I should say 4 coaches, because maybe they may be now our coaches, but we have a group of coaches, saying this way. And I just happened to know one of the lady, actually kind of my neighbor. All right, so that's a good thing. And we all had a good time to share who was the first person they think important. And I think 2 of us would get into like career people, and 2 of actually their husbands. All right, so that's what we talk about in our group. But I think our group can add more here if I miss anything. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share.
Thank you. Before I let you go, can you just tell us what your name is? I can't. Is it Saya?
Sure. Yeah, Saya is my name.
Cool. And where are you, Saya?
Oh, I am in Herndon, Virginia.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Anybody else want to tell us what happened in your room or what you shared, your story?
You know what I found interesting in our room? We had such disparate stories because you gave us such wide range to pick a story from our personal life or work life, or, you didn't guide it in any way. So we had 4 completely different styles of stories. It was really interesting to hear what people plucked out of their life, because we could all probably tell 100 stories, right? And just each picked a random one.
Yeah, nice, thanks. All right, I'm gonna close that down. Thanks, Andrea. Andrea, right? Yeah. So, we only gave you 7 minutes in a room. We don't expect that you're going to find a best friend in those 7 minutes. Why are we asking this question about how you met a friend? I think what we're trying to do as we start this conversation here today is think about, how do people connect? How do they build trust? How do they build relationships? What builds these long-lasting relationships? Where do they start? And do they start with what was your favorite food and then that's how we got to be best friends? Like, probably not, right? So we'll come back to this idea of this first impromptu networking moment. But I just want you to think about, why did we ask that question? And we'll come back to that over and over again, probably. Dawn, you want to talk about round 2 here?
Yeah. So we're going to go back into breakout rooms for another round of impromptu networking, and you'll be with different people this time. So you'll get to know others different from the group you just worked with. So we want you to do the same thing, kind of introduce yourselves to each other. And then this time, rather than share a micro story, we want you to share what maybe themes you heard in the prior group. So like Andrea said, they had 4 different stories. Saya said they were very similar, but what kind of themes did you hear? And, throughout that discussion. So are there any questions before we send you into breakout rooms again? Okay, Mariana, you ready to go?
Yep. And you'll have 7 minutes again with 30 seconds letting you know they're gonna close.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so enjoy your conversation.
There we go.
Welcome back, welcome back. Okay, anybody still in the rooms?
I think we're all back now.
I think everybody's back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So we're going to do the same thing as we did before, where we want you to take your piece of paper. We're going to pause. I want you to write down who you met, maybe a little bit of what you talked about. So we'll just take a moment to do that. So I know there's lots of times I participate in sessions, and at the end, I'm like, what was that person's name again? And oh, I want to remember that person. And when I met about 10 people, and which one was the one I wanted to talk to about this, so it's good to take those pauses. Okay, so we'd like to ask for, 1 or 2 people to represent your group and share the themes that you heard. You may want to switch your view to speaker view, so it highlights who's sharing. So who would like to share for their group?
I could share.
I'll share. Oh.
Go ahead, Allison.
No, one of the things I thought was interesting is that I think initially we were struggling to find some sort of a theme. We weren't really sure because there were so many different kinds of stories. I had Andrea and Kamala in my group, and as Andrea mentioned previously, they were very, the stories that her previous group had told were very, very different. Some were personal, some were business. But as we talked, as the 3 of us, we realized this sort of theme of serendipity kind of came up, that, it wasn't that people were necessarily planning to have these meetings, whether it was a spouse or a friend or a business partner or whatever it was, but there was this element of serendipity that came into play, just happening to be in the same place at the same time, or someone was supposed to go on a trip and then couldn't at the last minute, and someone else stepped in, and then they ended up getting married. So all of these really interesting pieces that fell into place somehow. And one of the things I mentioned was that there's a lot of, I'm a little bit of a neuroscience geek, so there's a lot of brain research out there on not only the importance of connection, but how even just sharing the experience and being in the same place at the same time really lights up certain neurons that make that feeling stronger, even if you're not realizing it. So the story of, meeting your best friend at the bus stop at the same time, as Kamala said, and just being there at the same time had this sort of impact on the brain that made them want to talk to each other and continue that relationship. So that's what came out of our conversation.
Yeah, and we didn't tell you guys this, but Allison's going to lead the rest of the session to tell us about these neurons and so forth.
Oh.
I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
No, I think that was perfect. That was perfect for the what we're trying to explain here. So thank you. And Amy,
and it's just a lot of the work that I do. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm just teasing you, but I think that was perfect. Amy, I think you were going to share for your group as well.
Yeah, something we just talked about is all of us have encountered in our profession, just our leaders, our professionals, our facilitators, our educators are sometimes the hardest ones to get to engage and give evaluations and feedback from. So, we want them to lead these sessions and get feedback from their students or their attendees, and then they don't give it back. So it's hard to get sometimes those top level people to give you what you're trying to get them to get out of their students. So it's just interesting.
Yeah. So why do you think we picked this particular question of sharing this micro story of somebody who was important to you or meaningful for you? Why do you think we picked that question? Anybody? Yeah, Robin?
Because we all have some sort of story. We've all made a connection somewhere. It's something that we can all relate to.
Exactly. And that relating, it starts to build trust. And so we want you to think about with your groups, how do you help them do some networking and build some trust so that their relationship moves a little further along. So what's another question that you might ask? Anybody want to type in the chat or share off mic another question that you might ask that would help people get into the flow, help people start to feel comfortable communicating with each other and trusting?
And I forget, Dawn, this is not even a pre-planned question. Are we asking people for today what another question would be that they would ask, or for like their own?
No, if you were going to do this same impromptu networking with one of your clients or at your work, what's a question that you might ask to help people relate to one another, come together, help them get into the flow?
I've heard a similar thing done with how you got your first job. And the reason that one resonates is we've probably all had a first job. So that's pretty safe in a work environment. And the first job is often so unrelated to what we do today that it adds an element of learning something you didn't know about the person.
I see in the chat, how have you overcome a challenge for a nonprofit board? What first brought you to be interested in our organization and what? What's been most satisfying about being involved in this? What's your favorite thing about your job? I work for doctors. Would one be, why did you choose to become a doctor? Dream location, destination. And I guess I want to preface it as well, even though part of this is bringing people together and getting comfortable, because they may be tackling some tough challenges later in the session. So try your best to be it as almost priming the pump of them getting comfortable with each other, but also priming the pump of the topic that you're going to be discussing. So, all right, thank you for that. Thank you for that sharing. So, we did a lot of this verbally, and okay, how can we reframe icebreakers? Okay, we'll go over that. I wouldn't call it an icebreaker, number one. But I want to note that we didn't capture anything because, and as facilitators, we're often capturing things that will go into a report, but it's also important to hear people and let them be verbal. So that is a good thing to make sure you're doing in addition to any kind of capturing on paper that you're doing. Another thing we want to mention about related to networking is when people came off mic and shared what happened in their groups, we had about 4 people sharing so far. They kind of became a micro celebrity in our event here. So you may go back and find that person afterwards. Hey, I really liked what you said about that. I want to talk to you further, and make sure you connect with that person. So creating those micro celebrity moments helps create those connections as well. Lee, I'm going to turn it over to you. Yeah, I see people asking a lot about how would we call it instead of an icebreaker.
Yeah. Yeah, I often don't, just, this is a question we probably could save to the end, but I almost never say the word icebreaker because people do the thing with the squirrel and they roll their eyes and they're like, I hate icebreakers. And you're like, I just want you to ask questions of like your neighbors, and people are like, oh, I'm okay with that, right? And I also just say, like, as an aside, I'm smiling here because it's such a knowledgeable group, and I'm just smiling going through the questions. It's really different than doing this with a group that's not facilitation heavy, and there's some really good ideas here. And to just quickly to, I think it was David's point here about like, how do we reframe icebreakers? Not so much in a work setting, but often at like a cocktail party or something, right? I can't take off my facilitator hat. And my icebreaker when I meet people, or when I just meet people, instead of what do you do, I ask them like, have you ever really used a good icebreaker? Or what's a good way that you've met people? And then people start talking about that. And it's like this weird circular thing that happens. So anyway, I am tasked here with, we're 50 minutes into this session. We've done a bunch of like meeting and greeting and stuff before we actually getting to the heart here. So now I'm going to talk about our agenda for the day. So what we've already done, we used the chat storm and we did introductions. We had those water cooler moments, which I often think are, things that may happen just as we're starting, or even before we officially start an event, is, we're intentionally getting people to connect and come together. We debriefed those. I'm gonna just quickly go into this thing that we're calling a social risk ladder, that I call a social risk ladder. We'll go through that quickly. We'll take a break, about 1:10, 1:15 or something like that. Real break, you can step away. Then we'll come back and we'll get into the meat of not just talking about this stuff, but applying it. And that's hopefully where, all your years of experience come in, and you say, I understand the scenario. Here's something that I might try in that time or that space with this group to make it better. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end and we'll do some networking that'll be a little bit better than just dropping you into a room and hoping that you talk about stuff. So that's what we're off to do here today. We've already done a lot of it. So that's the agenda. And yeah, I think that's it. Hopefully you're taking notes, writing stuff down on paper, thinking about who you met and all that stuff. Questions before I move on to the social risk ladder? All right. I am going to share my screen. And here we go. Can you guys just give me a thumbs up if you see my shared screen here? Thank you. All right. I see Amy and Claire. Okay. So a lot of times when we do icebreakers or networking events or whatever we call them, I'm sort of lumping them together. They often get, they often overlap, right? Is we say, we go around in the room, what's your name? And then we're done. Or we jump right to something and we say like, what's wrong with our organization? Everyone share what's wrong with our organization. Or we jump right into, we're doing strategic planning. Let's get right to where we want to be in 5 years. And I think of it as risk, and particularly social risk, in terms of what are you willing to share and how do we build connections that, we know at the base here, what's your favorite food? We all like pizza. That doesn't mean anything. But how do we connect on things that are personal and interesting, like how you met your spouse, or how you met your best friend, really starts to talk about something that's unique to you and isn't just generically, I like pizza. We all like pizza, right? So what I'm going to, also, this is the joy of working from home. I have somebody at my door right now, but we're going to just ignore that. Okay. So this is what I call a social risk ladder. I'm going to give you the example of my high school pep rally day. Guys, I'm surprised not everyone had pep rallies or like pep weeks. Anyone have pep weeks, pep rallies, high school? All right, thank you. I feel like maybe this is foreign to some folks. So we'd have like the big homecoming game, football game. And what we wanted was for the whole student body to, like dress up and get really into this week, right? And so what we wanted, or what the student government wanted, was at the end of the week on the Friday before the big game, everyone would dress up as a ram. We were the Rams. And we'd all come into school, everyone would dress up in costume as a ram. And the thinking is, you put up signs in the hallways, on Friday, everyone dress up as a ram. You know what happens if you tell a bunch of high school students to just dress up as a ram? They don't do it, because if you don't want to be the only one who shows up to school dressed up in costume and everyone else looks at you and goes, kind of a dork, right? So you don't want to do that. So let's think about the social risk. Instead, what we say is, what can we do on Monday? What can we do on Tuesday? What can we do on Wednesday, et cetera? And then on Friday, everyone does this thing where we all dress up in costume, right? So I'll give you a second to think about where you might do this in terms of like your Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday progression here, right? So on one day, we dress up as a ram. On one day, we wear jeans. On one day, we all wear like just fake horns of some nature. And on one day, we all wear red, which is the school colors, right? I'm going to give you just a second to think about how you would string that together from Monday to Friday. And then I'm going to do it at least the way we sort of did it. Okay. So you guys can disagree, but this is the way it came out. First, wear jeans for school spirit. Everyone's going to wear jeans anyway. You didn't have to think about it. If you weren't going to wear jeans and you thought, well, it's jeans day, no one's going to know that you thought about wearing a dress or khakis or something, right? We start off with jeans. And then we say, everyone wears red. I might have worn red anyway. Doesn't really matter. It's just a t-shirt. It's fine, right? And then we say, dress up like with something small, maybe just little horns, those little like kind of, things that you put on your head, just little horns or something, right? Something ram-like. And then by the end of the week, this is not the greatest picture here, but that guy, okay. Everyone dresses up as a ram, right? And I can guarantee you that by the end of the week, there are more people saying, people around me are into this thing, I'm going to do it, as opposed to if we had just said out of the blue, everyone come into school dressed up as a barnyard animal, right? That is not a high school thing, right? So I'm going to come off of the stop share here. You can disagree with the progression, but what I want you to hold in your brain is this idea of over the course of 2 hours or 2 days or whatever your session is that you're running, we might start with something small and easy, but we probably want to keep moving along. And what we probably don't want to do is start with something really hard right out of the gate, because people clam up and they're like, I kind of hate this and I don't want to do it, right? Even when we ask people, share the most interesting thing about you. That's the first thing that happens in a session. And people are like, oh, there's nothing interesting about me. And Anne Claire's like lived in all these different countries and she's done all this stuff. And like, you get embarrassed and you freeze up. But instead, if we just say, well, like, how did you meet your friend? People are like, oh, I have a friend. I can talk about that, right? So I just want you to keep that in mind. It's a construct. I think you all probably think of similar things as you're building sessions, but again, we have the luxury to, to really dwell on icebreakers and networking and stuff here. Yeah, I'm trying to look at the chat here too. Okay, so that's a social risk ladder. We are, well, I got a minute or two. Any questions on that quickly before we go into like the next thing, and then we'll take the quick break? I see there's questions in the chat and they're good points. I'm not going to disagree with those. Okay. All right. So let's do this. Let's take an actual first step in the social risk ladder. Often we would do this at the beginning of a session, and I will say, can you all just change your names in Zoom here? So like if you right click on your own face, or the 3 buttons pop up in the top right there. If you can just add a little bit of information after your name, where you're from, what you had for breakfast, if you're looking for a job, if you just got married, any of that's like, it's going to be pretty vague. I want to make the point that we can do lots of stuff down in this space. It could be anything, but if you can just take a second and add something, where you live, anything interesting that is at the very bottom of this risk ladder. It's anything that you're just adding to your name. I'm going to do that myself. Okay, I'm going to be vulnerable here and share with you that mine now says Lee Gimple, lifelong vegetarian. Not entirely true. I started on my own when I was 5 years old. So close enough at this point. Yeah, and to see what people wrote, you can either page over, or if you cheat, you can right click and then say pin, or you can go down to participants, pull up the participants window, and then see everybody in like a nice list there. So that's my quick overview of the risk ladder, quick little demonstration of that. We did promise you a break, and I'm going to deliver that. But Dawn, let me just check in before we release the hounds. Anything else we should be talking about?
We also talked about if you had an in-person meeting and everyone's wearing name tags, that they could possibly share something more partway into the meeting on their physical name tag. So there were a couple questions in the chat. Do you want to do that now or later at the end?
Yeah, I kind of lost track of them. Do you have stuff you want to pull out of here, Dawn?
Yeah, so David is basically saying, what's the connection between social risk, icebreakers, and the purpose of the meeting? I mean, yeah, what's the connection?
Yeah, so yeah, I would think about if we're doing strategic planning or something, for example, we might want people to talk about, actually, it was somebody here was talking about, one of the questions was, or sorry, one of the answers, or one of the suggestions was for doctors to share how they became doctors. I think that was one of the things that someone had said as a suggestion. So if I was doing a strategic planning, thanks, yeah, session with doctors, there's one part where we start off and we ask something sort of like nonsensical, like what's your favorite food? And that probably doesn't do much for us. But if we start off and we say something that's like, where do you practice, or where did you, where was your first job? That's pretty low risk. It's very factual. We don't have to get very personal about it. If we say later on, what got you to become a doctor, that's maybe a further risk question. Or, what do you think is wrong with medicine? Maybe like a higher level of risk or a higher level of, personal commitment that we have to talk about. I think the field is really broken this way or something, right? And if we're talking about this in the context of strategic planning or of whatever we're doing with these folks, we're working through this progression of how people are talking to each other or what the groups are talking about. Again, I know that this group is pretty knowledgeable about this stuff, but I've certainly been in groups where people just want to jump in and be like, what's wrong with the industry, or how do we fix this hospital? And it's like, people recoil from it. And I just think, like, how do we seed the room with good ideas, or with ideas that people feel comfortable discussing? And I think that that's going to matter if it's a group that's comfortable with each other or is comfortable with the topic. So favorite blood test, yeah.
And then an earlier question was from Amy, what do you do when you have people not participating on camera or verbally? What is a good way to get them involved?
Yeah. Do you want to take that? I always have stuff to say about that.
What was that?
Yeah, did you want to take that, or do you want to?
Oh, I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah.
Well, I find that, like, we did our chatter storm in the beginning, and even smaller breakout rooms, maybe in pairs or triads, often helps people get over that hump. There's a lot of philosophy about having the breakout rooms really early in your sessions. If you're doing a virtual, if you're doing it in person, maybe putting people in pairs to share something. But the smaller and safer place for people to get started might help them pull them into the meeting. And that's just a couple of ideas. There's more out there people may want to put in the chat if they want to add to that. I I want to keep us on time. So Amy, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I can answer quickly. I have a good one for that. So what I've been doing is I'll give a homework the day or two before the meeting that says to upload a photo for the virtual background, and I'll let them know how to do that. And then one of the first times we go to a breakout room will be talk about whatever your photo is. And sometimes I give a prompt like a place you'd like to travel, and sometimes I leave it open. And so that homework gets them on camera. So
yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing. All right, Leah, let's get them into the break.
Yeah. Okay. So we promised you a break. We are going to deliver on that promise. We'll give you about 10 minutes, and we're so many good questions here, actually. So we'll actually have you step away from the computer. We're not going to have you do anything in this break, except wait, that's not right, Don. We are going to have them do something, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, sorry, I stole your thunder here. Do you want to talk about that?
Okay, during the break, we want you to turn off your cameras, leave your computer, and take a true break. And when you come back, though, we want you to come back with a book that you think is interesting or valuable to the work that you do, and you're going to share it on your video. And we're going to do a screenshot so that we have a list of all of the books that were valuable to people. So for now, we're going to have a 10-minute break. And like I said, turn off your cameras, turn off your microphones, make sure you stretch, get out of your chair and move around and come back with a book.
Thanks for coming.
I just need to, oh, I got it. Okay.
I hear some clicking. There we go.
So this is
oh, wow.
Wow. Including our eye-rolling squirrel. Getting into chat storms, and I was able to, once we got into networking and icebreakers and how they go hand in hand.
Right.
Fun.
Great moments on how people connected with the breakout rooms. They're not direct quotes, but and then themes that you noticed. It was great to hear Allison talk about
right.
And how people connect through that. And Lee, I even included Ram mascot in the social risk ladder.
Yeah, I know. Cheshire High School had no idea that they were going to be this famous years later. I appreciate that.
That's great. That's great, Sarah. Well, she's going to continue while we continue on, but I think it's great to see her progress and some of the things that she captured for our learning. Great job. Let's give her some jazz hands. That's great. Okay, so now we would like everybody to share your book, and we're not going to go by one. We're just going to do a screenshot so that everybody sees the book. So for example, I have a book called Questions at Work by Dorothy Strackham. So if everybody could hold up your book and your video, and looks like Amy and Lee have got the same taste. And then if Anne Claire, I think you were going to do the screenshot, or Mariana, one of you was going to do a screenshot. So give us a countdown so everybody knows. Did we get it? I can't tell if we're done. Are we done? Okay, great. Well, I almost held up the Art of the Focus conversation too. That one's one of my favorites. So, all right, great. So we'll share the screenshot with everyone. So you've got a library of books to think about. I know a lot of people are getting electronic books these days more than a hard copy, but there's something about a physical book that I still appreciate. So, okay, so we did see some duplicates there, and I'm just curious if let's ask for just one or two people to share why that particular book. Ula almost did the same book I did. Isn't that funny? Our minds were on the same page. So who would like to just talk about their book real quick?
I'll
I
talk
will,
about
if,
mine.
Okay.
Okay, you go ahead, Bill, because you're the host.
Well, this is from 1976. It's called How to Make Meetings Work. And this book still is the best introductory primer to facilitation I have ever seen. It's has all the basic concepts and principles. And it was one of the first books that I saw, and it's really a cool book, very accessible, and I recommend it.
Okay. All right. Christine, you want to share real quick about your book?
Yeah, so like Allison, I'm a brain geek, and this Lisa Feldman Barrett is one of my favorite authors, and this is her How Emotions Are Made book. She's got, this is from 2017. You know, you have to be interested in kind of the deep down on how brains work, but her more recent book, 7.5 Lessons About the Brain, is super accessible, and I think it's applicable to everything that we all do all the time.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. So you probably notice we're sort of flowing in different directions and all, but because we're trying to show you as many different ways that you could potentially techniques or tools you could use with someone. So what's another thing you could do other than a book? Somebody could come back from break and share in the room, and it maybe relates to whatever you're working on. So what's an idea that somebody might have there? Any ideas popping up?
Eula has her hand up.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Right.
Hi, Don. Saya here. I'm just going to talk if you don't mind. Just quick sharing. So come from the break. I thought at break, everybody just get a drink, right? So maybe the other thing is, what kind of drink did you get? Some people actually told me they get a cappuccino, coffee, latte. So
Ula, your hands up.
Yes, similar to that. I've done it before. So with persons, just grab an item near to you and then explain how you use that item, and also what does it tell us about you? What does it tell us about you, Dawn?
Removing staples.
Yeah.
It's interesting, as I did a partnering session where we were trying, it was more about this team gelling together. And so during the break, I asked him to go outside and whatever they saw outside, to come back in and describe one thing that they saw outside. And this is when the cherry blossoms were blooming. And the first person said, "Oh, my cherry tree is in full bloom." And we spent the next 10 minutes, everybody talking about their cherry trees and blooming. And it was amazing how many people were smiling. And it was amazing. We did a series of meetings, and the cherry trees kept coming up at the following meetings. So it kind of created this bond, even though it wasn't purposeful. It was purposeful as far as teaming, but it was interesting how the cherry trees kind of took over as our theme. So anyway. Okay, so thanks for that sharing. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Lee, for this next step.
This is not in the script, but you know, when we talk about stuff like the cherry trees, I think it's easy to dismiss things like it's a group of people talking about cherry trees or something like that, and it doesn't matter because we're trying to do strategic planning for this hospital or something. But in the end, right, it's a dozen people sitting in a room for a day or two, and it's really important that these people feel like they're connected and they're like, they like each other, and that there's good energy in the room, right? And I think, I don't know if cherry trees is always the answer, right? But I want people, for me, right? I want people to leave at the end of the day feeling like, you know, that was good, and I like being in that room, as opposed to I was, you know, brought to task in that room. And we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know it's going to be cherry trees, but it might be that, you know, at the break, people are like, I really love talking about this stuff, and that's part of what just changes the tenor of those hours that you're spending together, maybe doing really difficult work, right? Okay, so speaking of difficult work, we're going to do some real difficult work now. We're going to actually think about how do we use some of the stuff we've been talking about here today in some actual scenarios, and we'll share those scenarios in a sec. It's actually the same scenario in person and then online. And we're going to start with a scenario in person, as if you were in a room with this group, and what could you do with them in that group given some certain constraints. And then we're going to flip it and we're going to do it online. Why are we doing that? This year notwithstanding, we're used to probably working in person for many of us, so that's a comfortable place to be. It also gives us 3 dimensions to work with. It gives us a bunch of tools that, even if there are facsimiles of Post-it notes and stuff online, we know that some of these things just work different and maybe better in person. I don't want to get into this debate of which is better in terms of online versus in person, but I think we're just going to start in person, and then we'll move the scenario to online. So we'll show you that in a sec. And I guess part of the question here too is, if we've all spent a year online, how do we take some of the learnings that we've taken off the last year and apply them now to stuff in person? So that's sort of a separate, interesting question, I think, to deal with. Dawn, I think, are you sharing the document that we're going to share with everyone else? Do you want to bring that up? So we've basically created this document for you. There's a scenario there, and let me look through here. Okay. So you'll find your team number once we put you in the breakout rooms. If you're in breakout room number 1, you will use the link to breakout room or team number 1, and then you're going to fill out the ideas there. So Dawn, you want to just go down to breakout room 1, and let's just go through the scenario here. In this case, you are going to be working with a group of folks who are coming together. We are trying to help this mixed group of organizations working in Guatemala, right? And you have, on one hand, and we see this happen quite a bit, right? You have these big stakeholders. You have folks like World Bank, or like UN or something like that. Big organizations, right? And on the other hand, you have these small organizations, the local Guatemala neighborhood group or something like that, right? And you've got to get these groups to come together, and there is inherent mistrust, there's power issues, there's a lot of things that like really happen in a room. Is the answer, icebreakers are going to solve everything? No, but what can we do with this group to help them better understand who's in the room, why they're in the room, how they're all connected, that we feel this sense of cohesion? That's part of this facilitation work. And obviously it's going to be stitched into everything else that you're doing in that, hour of the day or whatever you have to work with this group. But let's think about it in terms of how we're connecting people, a little separate from what's the specific activity, where do we identify, the issues at hand, and we resolve them, right? What can we do throughout that day to sort of improve how it goes, right? So let me see if I can make this bigger. Yeah. So here's what you've got. You've got the scenario up there. There's 36 people in this group, which, it's kind of a big group, but it's not, it's not 100 people. What you have in this actual physical space, you are in a room, you have a collection of glossy magazines, you have scissors, you have colored yarn, you have a big empty wall, you have a small whiteboard, you have tape, you have markers, you have an LCD projector and laptop, you have a single microphone and a speaker. And I think what we want you to think about here is not just, can we come up with something to do at the beginning of this day and have people go around and just say, my name is John Smith, I work for the UN, I'm based in New York, next person, right? What can we do to move this group forwards towards whatever they're doing, or forward towards whatever they're doing? And you don't have to use any of these damn things if you don't want to, right? You may have something that you think is just people stand in a circle and they do something, and we don't need any of your stupid, glossy magazines and your scissors and your colored yarn and Dawn's, stapler on her desk. You don't need any of that stuff, right? But you have these things and you could use them. Could you use yarn in some way? Could you use something on the projector? Could you use the microphone? We don't know. This is really where we're trying to tap into the group's expertise. So I think what we're going to do is have you think about that first, Dawn, am I missing anything before we start this people into this process?
I just want to stress, we're going to be doing 2 rounds of breakouts, but you'll stay with the same people. And so the first round is about an in-person event, and then we'll come back to the main room. And then the second round will be about an online event, and then you'll come back to the room. So just to set your expectations.
Yeah. And also if you can't, I think someone's dropping the Google link in there. And, you know, you'll be doing one session or one breakout, and then we'll come back and we'll do it with the same team. If you can't make the first breakout, let Mariana know. If after that, if you can't make the second breakout, let her know that as well. So we're gonna, she's making groups as we speak here. I know that. So let's do this. You don't know what group you're in, but you do know what the assignment is. You do know that you have these 36 people from these different groups that are coming together to talk about this, economic development in Guatemala. And you know what you have there, and you now have the Google Sheet so you can see what you have. To that question earlier about what would you do for introverts, and this is something that we're trying to do, intentionally, is we're going to give you just a little bit of time to think about what might I do with the stuff I have. And then when we put you into your groups, you already have something in your brain, and we're not going to put you on the spot or in the spotlight and say, quick now, come up with something brilliant in front of 3 strangers. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to give you just a minute or so to sketch out a couple ideas on that piece of paper before we put you into the breakout rooms. Any questions before we do that? Sorry.
Right.
So record now. Think of a couple of things so that you've got them in your brain before you go into the breakout room. Then you'll go into the breakout room. You'll discuss your ideas in a group of maybe 3 or 4 people.
But you don't want us to put something on this Google Sheet until we're in the breakout room.
Right. Yeah. Just on your
that's
regular piece of paper that's sitting next to you. Just write some ideas down. And then once you go in the breakout room, what we are suggesting is if you have a group of 3 or 4, maybe just quickly kind of go around the room. Here's something I thought of. Here's something I thought of. Here's something I thought of. And then just sort of talk through those. It's kind of an easy way that we find to do that. So let me give you another just minute or so to think about ideas. Once you're in those rooms, obviously, think about equitable sharing and just make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. You'll see at the bottom of that sheet, each group has, if you're in breakout room number 1, you go to, the sheet labeled team number 1. There's 4 little sections or 4 numbers down at the bottom. We're thinking if you come up with 3 or 4 ideas, that would be great. Don't have to be super in depth, but maybe more than share your favorite food or something, right? And think about that social risk ladder, right? Of maybe you're doing something in the beginning of the day versus later in the day, or you're doing something that's more collaborative, whatever. Right? And maybe think of new and different ways to use those tools you have. Maybe there's a different way to use scissors or use, I don't know, right? Dawn, last thoughts before we send them out?
No, I think we're ready to go.
All right, enjoy your time together brainstorming. I'm excited to see what comes back, honestly. Whenever you are ready, Mariana, happy to send folks out. Yeah.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Enjoy.
It's always so fun seeing everybody come back.
Smiling.
Okay, welcome back. So, and I got to find my place. There we are. Okay, so what we'd like to know now is if anybody would like to share for their group maybe just one idea that it was your top idea. If we want to hear from a couple of the groups on that. We are going to share everything in the Google Sheet with you for later so that everybody would get all the ideas, but we'd like to hear from a couple of you. So who would like to share for their group? We want to hear these rich ideas.
So I'll share from our group. When somebody had an idea about writing down on a piece of paper, we had an in-person thing. One hope you have for the day, and then putting it in a big basket and then having somebody read out one concern you have is the second round. And we talked about at least when the icebreaker is connected to the purpose of the group, and that the group would know immediately why they're doing it. Like I wouldn't need to have a magic wand or do something mysterious as a facilitator, that it was so self-evident, the icebreaker. And then one person also shared the miracle question of like, if you were to go to sleep tonight, wake up tomorrow, what would you like to be different? And then actually pairing them up, pairing the large group with the small group, the opposite stakeholders to pair share on that. So immediately building rapport, but embedded within a purpose.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, David.
Can I just say, I'm glad you're the first person to share, David. I'm glad somebody hit that right off the bat, is like, can we get these two groups to connect instead of just saying any connection in the room is a good connection. So yeah, that's great. I love that one.
Yeah. Great. Hey, thank you for sharing. Can we hear from another group?
Our group has an idea about the magazine. Actually, one of our group members say that it's good to cut off the magazine pages and just lay on the anywhere, and then everybody come in, just pick up the one page, and then from there it can resonate to create an image. Well, what I add on is probably it's the food. They can say, oh, that was my best food, or maybe my best restaurant, or maybe the place they travel to, right? Something like that. So that's the magazine idea I capture. The other team member also has some idea. Hey, super mom, I'm just call my group member. Do you want to add that for that?
Yeah, the idea was to kind of go up the ladder a little bit by starting with talking about your organization and your organization's focus, then your personal focus, what you would want to champion as far as the cause, and then that would leave us with a kind of a list, and let people group themselves on that list with the magazines to get themselves a visual on what success looks like. And then we would go from that to talking about how we differ from success now and what we can do to reach the success.
Great.
That's our super mom. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Okay, so excuse me. So it's going on 2 o'clock, and we're going to make sure we're taking a break about every hour. So we're going to take a mini break this time, about 5 minutes, and you'll be returning and going into a second round of this same idea sharing, but it would be virtual instead of in person. And you'll be with the same people you just worked with this time. So just to prepare you for that. So for now, though, same thing, turn off your videos, turn off your microphone, mute your microphones, get away from your desk. We don't have any assignments this time, so we'll see you back in 5 minutes. Welcome back, welcome back.
Don, let's just ask about time before we jump into the next one.
Yeah. And I'm also curious, did you find in your groups you were focusing on whether it was in person or virtual, or did it not seem to matter? I'm just sort of curious what, was it intentional about it being an in-person session? Can anybody answer that? I see Karen shaking her head yes.
Yeah, it was supposed to be in person, wasn't it? Weren't we?
Yes,
that's what we
yes.
were doing? Okay, that's what we did.
Great. And then we gave you 12 minutes. Did that feel like enough time? Was it too short, too long? Felt like a good amount of time. I'm seeing some shaking of heads and thumbs up. Okay. All right. Thank you for that feedback. So we're going to basically, it's the same scenario in Guatemala. And this time we want you to focus on it being virtual. And you may want to think about the fact that not all 36 people may fit on the screen. And maybe people don't have their videos on, or maybe people are at home or they're in offices. So you have Zoom at your disposal with breakout rooms. You can use something like Mural or Google Docs. And you also have a budget of $25 a person that you could ship a care package in advance of the session. So those are some of the tools you have. So like before, we want you to go to the same Google link, which Anne Claire, you may want to put it in the chat again. And there's a second page of the same breakout room. You're going to the same group with the same people. And there's a second page where you capture your ideas for the virtual space. And so like before, you may want to just share what you came up with individually and try to come up with 3 or 4 ideas for your group, and then capture them in that page, second page of your Google Sheet. And then when you come back, we'd like to hear from a few of you. And again, remember the social risk ladder, and just think of new ways, unusual ways, creative ways to use the tools that you have. So are there any questions before we send you into breakout rooms?
We're keeping it to 12 minutes, right, Dawn?
In 12 minutes, yeah. Okay, let's send them off.
Bye.
Welcome back. So the first thing that we're going to have you do, this is your 3rd breakout room or your 3rd group, even though it's the 4th breakout room, right? It's just to take a minute and write down who you talked to, who you met. If you promised to send a book recommendation to someone, just take those 30 seconds or the minute just to record that. I see people staring back at me, so I assume folks are sort of back here. So we're obviously going to go through, we're going to debrief a little bit of what we talked about in those rooms. We're going to give you a chance to look through those rooms and see what the other groups came up with. One thing or 2 things, I guess, kind of that I just want to talk about in terms of, we started off, we did this impromptu networking or the triad networking really early on. We talked about these friend stories. And that was 6 minutes. We've worked up, we just gave you 12 minutes and then we gave you another 12 minutes. You just spent nearly a half hour with, 3 other people. And I don't know that we would call it, we just did an icebreaker. In fact, I certainly wouldn't call it an icebreaker, right? But I would call it networking in the sense of we're working collaboratively. And if we think again about this risk ladder idea of, we start off in small chunks. We're talking about stuff that isn't the heart of what we're doing here. And then we kind of work up to, you just spent half an hour with these, with strangers in many cases, right? And talking about real things. You're all by nature as facilitators probably pretty used to this stuff, but well, not to like insult anyone's intelligence here, right? But this is this idea of, by the end of our session here, we're having you spend a half an hour together with these people. To say right out of the gate, you're going to spend a half an hour with people you don't know can be a difficult thing. So I think just, sort of keep that in the back of your mind in terms of networking and collaborative work and whatever. So what I want to have you do now is, before we talk about what happened in those rooms, which I do want to talk about, is just to give you sort of this gallery walk moment here, virtual gallery walk moment. You have the link to the Google Sheet. If anyone doesn't have that, maybe just message us or message Anne Claire, and we can put that up. If you're not seeing it in front of you, we could do a share screen, I guess. But I'm just going to give you 3 or 4 minutes. Just read through what the other groups have come up with. Maybe we all came up with the same things. Maybe we came up with things vastly different. I'm going to do this myself and see what came up. So let's do this 3 or 4 minutes. Gallery walk, just go through that sheet, see what the other groups came up with at the bottom of their pages, and then we'll come back in a minute, or a couple minutes. This is kind of the reason why. Thanks, I appreciate you guys putting that stuff in there. Yeah, I mean, to an earlier question, why did you sign up for this? I'm really just interested in this topic of icebreakers and networking, and I think just to see some of the other ideas come out about how can we do this in a way that isn't just the same old networking, the same old icebreakers, I think is really just interesting. So I just dropped in some questions in the chat that you may just want to think about here in terms of what you're taking from this, be it in person or be it online. Just sort of general thoughts. What did you notice? What surprised you? Anyone want to tell us what happened in your group or what you're thinking at this point?
Looks like Sarah's raising her hand.
So our group had talked about the use of polls, and I noticed that that came up in one or two other groups.
And stuff that, is there a poll? I did see some poll stuff. What did you think about that, Sarah? And also, where are you buying a condo, Sarah? Or where are you looking for a condo?
Looking in Silver Spring.
Oh.
And we talked about like the different options that are available. So there's like Mentimeter, and you can do polls in Zoom.
Thanks. Other ideas that you guys liked? Other stuff that you thought was new or interesting? Good conversations that you had in the group? Just sort of general reactions at this point.
One thing that stood out to me, I was in breakout group 1, and we talked about how there could be potentially bandwidth issues in an international context, but outside of that, we didn't necessarily focus on the idea that this was taking place in Guatemala or could potentially. And so it stood out to me that at least 2 other groups did focus on that. And I loved the idea of mapping out the history of the country, mapping out a journey to find a job and what that looks like in that country specifically. And I don't remember which group it was, but one of them, for that $25 budget, when you are remote, sending people Guatemalan foods of some kind I thought that was a really positive way to keep the focus on the culture of that country, as opposed to someone else's definition of economic prosperity potentially.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that was interesting about the like the food session there or section is, I think, can we do this all together, as opposed to what I've often seen people say is like, we're going to all cook, or we're all going to, sample beer or something, and we just watch somebody do it. This happens a lot in like the conference space, or just sort of like the breaks between, strategic sessions or something. But it's really different, I think, to say, can we all cook together? Can we all do something? And I think that, to your point, Gina, is the collaborative nature of this, of can we map out, the history of Guatemala or where we all live or something, and it's in disguise, right? It's like a covert icebreaker, a covert networking moment of, it's not just, can you look at a map, but we're all in this together, we're doing something together. And I think that's, at no point are we saying, it's an icebreaker, now you're doing an icebreaker, right? And I think that's an important part of that I took from those ideas. Yeah, other folks want to share? I see some stuff coming up in the chat that I haven't gotten to catch up with here. Other folks?
Lee?
Yes, Beth.
One thing that came up in our discussion with the experience that some of us have had with other countries is that there's less tolerance for any icebreaker that takes a long time, or that takes the normal time that we would perhaps devote to doing those kinds of things in an in-person environment. If you're doing a retreat, or you're focusing on something that normally would be an in-person event for one day, there's no way people are going to sit in front of a computer screen for a whole day. We all know that. So it has to be really, really condensed. You have to get the most important elements. You have to really be using your time efficiently, be spot on. You don't have the luxury of doing some of the things that you might do if you're in a ballroom somewhere, or a conference room somewhere with people. So time is of the essence, and that was another thing that came up in our discussion.
Yeah, for sure.
I saw Robin's hand too.
Yeah. I always feel like my clients are always like, they don't want to spend a lot of time on stuff. So everything I do has to be so intentional about meeting the purpose. Like something has to relate to the next step, to the next step, to the next step, whether it's, in the subject matter. So I feel like you could do really intentional networking, icebreakers, but something that actually moves the needle on the work you're trying to accomplish that day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ties into the last point there too, that, we don't have a whole day, we don't get to do the whole, 30-minute, sort of icebreaker session. how do we get people to still connect and still feel, part of this? Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah,
what
and
we're-
prime the pump for innovation
Mhm.
and openness and all of that. So
And I think a lot of it's contextually dependent on your audience. So if it's a leadership team or an international leadership team, or if it's a local group, or if it's a community that people do know each other, don't know each other, and also how and why you've been hired, I think that all factors into actually the kind of icebreaker strategy that you need. And personally, I guess what I'm taking from this is I like self-evident icebreakers, that if we start to do something immediately, I don't care what kind of group it is, they know exactly kind of why we're doing it. Because I've now seen with Zoom, people are in so many of these meetings and they have so much less time, and they get irritated. Actually, if I come in with something that's, I don't want to be overly cynical, but I also want to be really practical. And make sure that my audience, I'm really tracking with my audience and their bandwidth, and their bandwidth is not as expanded now with all of these things that we're being exposed to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point. There's two things that come up for me there is not with this group, right? But in other things that I go to, people are like, we're going to start off and we're going to do an icebreaker, and it's the squirrel scale. And everyone is like, how is this relevant? How are you feeling today? Squirrel scale. And everyone goes, oh my gosh, okay, right? And then I think that it really has to tie in that you're using your time wisely, and that it all connects. I mean, I think one of the things that's really frustrating for me, because I do a lot of like icebreaker networking kind of work, is people say, it's like, you're a comedian, tell me a joke. And people are like, give me a good icebreaker. And it's like, I mean, I was fielding this by email the other day, and we sort of went through this whole thing, and was like, I just want 2 truths and 1 lie, or just tell me it's, this one icebreaker works for all people, all times, all places. It's a magic bullet. And I don't think that's true. And I think people have they see this as what we did in camp in 5th grade. And it's different than what we're doing with, strategic planning. Similar ideas, right? But 2 truths and a lie for a group of 50 executives is probably not the right thing. And it's amazing how many folks I've worked with are like, just give us that one thing that always works. And hopefully that's the thing that we pull from today is, how can we still get this connection building and sort of personality part of it into the water without doing it in a dumb way. I don't know how else to say that, but anyway.
And brain break versus ice break, I'm just seeing also brain breaks are great. I think somebody just put in the chat, like to do something really fun and be purposeful, like somewhere in the middle. People know that we're actually there to kind of play. But then ice break, when we talk about icebreakers, even the derivation of that word is like, what ice are we trying to melt? And with this group, if we want to be strategic about something, what is the thing that we really want to start to peel away in and kind of pour some warm water on? And then if we know that, then it makes sense to actually create something that's strategic and not just out of our box tricks kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that's right. The box of tricks is a difficult approach at times.
I prefer to call them my toolbox.
Other folks we've got, just in terms of where we are in the process here, we still have just a little closing to do, and then we'll give you a chance to, as per the end of the year, just a chance to actually sort of meet and do some, let's call it networking, but it's just a chance to meet some other folks in the community in the time that we have, which we did promise you in the description here. So other thoughts on this that came out of your group? Love to talk to everyone, but.
I'd like to hear if how many people, by show of hands, are taking away a new tool or a new thing they might apply to their practice. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Allison wrote, what's the squirrel thing? Would somebody like to share with her what the squirrel thing? She was having problems.
I feel like I missed that. Might have been in the beginning when I got kicked out.
Yeah. Thank you, Dawn, for joining us. Does somebody want to explain the squirrel, what happened with the squirrel thing for Allison?
I'll
Robin
explain.
got her hand
Yeah, it was a picture of, I think, 9 squirrels doing different things. Some are sleepy, some are happy, some are, whatever. And you're supposed to, actually, the prompt was confusing, Lace, because I think you gave 2 prompts. One was your comfort, your attitude or comfort about icebreakers. And so, and then also I think the other one was which squirrel do which squirrel do you feel like right now, or something like that. I don't know what you exactly said, but
Which squirrel looks like you the most?
right. Yeah. And I've used it with sheep, and I've seen it with cats, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And we were just mainly saying, if you are going to use the squirrel scale, make sure it's related to your
Yeah.
topic and that it's intentional and not just, which squirrel do you like the best?
Actually, I've used it as an icebreaker for 2 seconds, just to get voices in the room. That's all. And it takes 2 minutes. And you could say which sheep. I usually use sheep, and put it in the chat. And you could ask 1 or 2 people, oh, tell me why you picked that or something. And then you go off,
And that's why we made the question about how do you feel about icebreakers to tie into our subject here today. So
Yeah. If you were a squirrel and you were about to do an icebreaker, which one would represent you? And the squirrel's good because it's quick. It's like, even metaphorically, squirrels move fast.
Yeah.
I apologize if I did not give you the proper squirrel directions here. That was my bad.
Allison, does that give you a sense of?
I know, I absolutely. I think that was during the time I was having tech issues. So, and I have to drop in a few minutes as well, but it was great to see everyone and reconnect with some folks and learn some new things.
Well, we're not done yet.
I know.
Karen has her
Karen's
hand
about 5.
Karen has her hand up.
So I came in with the squirrels. I thought it was cute. I see the point. Where do I get the graphic? Where do I get the picture? That's what I really.
I just did a Google search.
On squirrels?
Squirrel scale, sheep scale, dog
squirrel scale. Okay. I just want to know, what am I going to Google? All right.
I have created my own scale because I wanted to do something quick and funny that was still kind of a temperature check. And the subject matter of the overall conference, which was multi-days online, was seaweed regulations. So I couldn't use seaweed, but I found a bunch of different fish images. And Karen, I was literally Googling like silly looking fish, like happy fish.
I thought you were going to do a Gina scale.
That would be kind of weird.
Yeah, there's actually a squirrel psychometric that I want to introduce you all to.
Okay, so Lee, why don't we close it up here?
Yeah. Now I feel like we're off on the scales tangent here.
I'm reining us in.
I feel like you all might have gotten something very different from today than what we expected. Dawn, what were they supposed to get from today? What are we talking about here? Let's close this thing up.
They were supposed to learn about the squirrel scale.
Yeah.
Well, that was what it was all about.
Yeah. So let me go back to what we promised you here. Hopefully I have this on here. Yeah. So the learning objectives that, as advertised, understand the application of the social risk ladder when using icebreakers and networking activities. Learn 3 techniques to improve your meetings with appropriate icebreakers, networking activities, and trust builders. Simulate how to adapt icebreakers and networking activities to online or in-person events, back and forth. And meet 4 to 6 facilitation colleagues learning from their own expertise and approach. So hopefully we've come close to doing that. Plus, you now know how to find the squirrel scale and the sheep scale and the fish scale online, or make your own. So that is like a bonus that we are giving you as a gift. And then let's just think about, in terms of, that's what we promised you. Let us tell them what you just told them. So let's actually go through and actually
Okay,
show
so
you what this is. Yeah.
So one of the first tools we did was a chat storm. So, and then what do we do, Lee?
So we started this off. We did this as we were just first introducing people. It looks like just meaningless banter, but it's a way to get people sort of comfortable and talking and on camera, right? Quick hit interviews. Where are you from? Why are you here? First time, that sort of stuff. Quick things.
Right. And then what do we do after that?
Is this up to me? I think I have the next card. Is this one mine? Impromptu networking, triad networking, pairs networking, again, quick networking, but time boxed with an objective. Let's not just say, hey, folks, you're here at our strategic planning meeting. Quick, meet each other. You've got, go meet each other. But like, let's have a purpose. Let's, put it in the box. I think to one of these questions there in terms of being introvert friendly, small groups with a purpose, with a time, it's not go meet a whole bunch of people in a big room. So I always think that's helpful.
And then we did the renaming, or you could take your name tags and have it be a conversation starter. During the break, we found out a lot about all the multiple languages that everybody speaks, all because Mariana put bilingual there, and it opened up a great conversation.
All right, I got one. Micro celebrities. So, I think, again, this is a group that sees this kind of stuff all the time, but can we shine the spotlight on other people? Can we give other people, or can we give people in the group a reason to come up to somebody at the break or whisper in their ear or have some feeling that like I'm connected to this person? Bring them up on stage, have them share. I'm trying to think of some of the good examples we had today. I'm sure Sarah is probably capturing them, and I wish I could pull them up here. Yeah, there's that. And then I think we have one or two more.
And then we did the share a book, coming back from a break, having some sort of assignment to come back after a break to bring people together, start that collaboration and community with each other.
Yeah. And I've got one more, and I just want to prep Sarah. I think, Sarah, you're going to come back on camera and show us sort of a final version of what you're doing, I think.
See, Karen's hand is up. Karen, did
Oh, I'm sorry. I need to take it down.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem.
You also did the case study. Are you going to mention the Google Docs case study thing that you did with us?
Yeah, and
You mean scenarios?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did those too.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of the bonus comes from, is we promised you a couple ideas, and probably most of the ideas that you're going to walk away from here today are things that you came up with in your group as opposed to what we're giving you.
And we had a huge harvest of ideas though, as a result of that.
And this is my last one in terms of sort of a technique. This should not be new and different to most of you here in the room, but it's collaborative work. We're going to work on, our strategic plan, but we're going to do it in a group, and we're going to maybe purposefully design who's in that group, right? I mean, I think to David's point earlier, we've got the UN person with the local Guatemala person, instead of saying, we're going to put the UN and World Bank people in the giant group and make like these adversarial teams. How do we make those collaborative groups further what's happening in this space, right? Okay, so that's what we tried to cover today. Sarah, do you want to show us some of what you've been working on? Am I putting you on the spot?
Can I say something before Sarah does?
Yes.
What you and Dawn just did in holding up the handwritten notes is also something that that switches things around too. I learned that from a coach.
And helps retain it.
It helps retain, yeah. So
Well,
don't
Sarah,
forget to put that on your list.
Yes. And Sarah, before you post, if everybody could raise your hand if you met or got to know somebody better today. And hopefully that's true for you in the breakouts. That's great. Okay. So Sarah, are you ready to show us your?
I'm not. 1 second.
Oh, okay. we can keep moving on then.
I think, Sarah, why don't you just jump in here when you're feeling ready? I'm gonna vamp. So we're gonna, this session was scheduled to go from noon until 3. We had planned to do, at least one kind of networking session, gab session at the end. If this was in person, we would have been downtown, and then we all would have adjourned to a bar, around the corner. We don't really have the ability to do that. We could have maybe with our $25 sent you all some beers or something, but we didn't actually have that in our budget, unfortunately.
Karen's going, yeah.
So Lee, before we do that, why don't I give just sort of a quick thank you from Maffin to thank Lee and Dawn and Mariana and Claire for managing things in the background, and Sarah for the graphic work for this session, and thank everybody for attending. And say I hope you all hope to see many of you or all of you again in September, or perhaps at a community of practice over the summer. And Sarah, when you're ready, just give us the high sign, and if you wanna show things. Otherwise, you will get a chance to see all that Sarah did. You will get an email with the recording of this session, as well as all of the notes and all of the graphics, and also Sarah's graphics that she's doing. So I'm going to turn it back to Lee now, and you can take us to Bar Deco.
Bar Deco, yeah. I see Sarah is sharing, so I'm going to kick it back to
Sarah.
Sarah, yeah. Sarah, you want to show us what's going on there? I love the eye roll and squirrel, by the way.
Good. Yeah, so you guys saw the first page after the first break. I just changed a few things around. And again, was able to capture a lot of great ideas, which is why my third panel is not done, because people were giving out a lot of great ideas and I was still capturing them. We did sharing the book after the break. And I'm happy to add in a couple other ones when I work on this afterwards, but it was great to include those cherry blossoms, tying into how creating a bond is important, even if it doesn't seem like it's on the subject. And then, as you can see, having in-person and online, and I am excited to go through the Google Sheets and show the similarities between in-person and online approaches, but also taking how they those approaches that were done in person translated to being online, and then including that great lesson that Lee put in about these breakout rooms were actually your own social risk ladder. And then the last one is a mess. So don't look too much at it, but
better than I would do.
Trying to bring it all together. And there seemed to be some great discussion coming out of the online ones, especially since that's what we've been doing for the last year. So yeah, that's been me.
Great. Let's give Sarah a hand. Good job. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. I love seeing that. I rarely get a chance to work with folks doing graphic recordings. So thank you, sir. We have like 10 minutes left. In the background, Mariana is putting us all in breakout rooms to take us to the end. Yeah.
But you can self-select to go to another room if you want.
Yeah, we'll
Just
make
like
that
you would
option.
if we went to Bar Deco. Oh, I want to go
Yeah.
say hi to Bill over there, or I want to go say hi to Amy over here. So once you're in a room, you click join and can join another group. Did I step on your toes, Lee? Is that what you were going to say?
Yes, I totally didn't forget to say that.
Oh,
No,
okay.
that's exactly right. So yeah, Mariana, just make sure that you enable that, choose your own room. We'll start you off in rooms of 3. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about at this point. I feel like at the risk ladder, we've all been warmed up at this point. Hopefully you have some familiar faces in there. If you were looking for something to talk about, I would say either, I would say, how did you feel about this session? How would you use it? Something like that. But if you want to talk about, buying a condo in Silver Spring, and that's the point of commonality, then we're not going to stop you. So yeah, thank you all for coming. We may do a little closing after we come back from the break room, but effectively you're done. This is the part where we wander into the hallways or into the parking lot. And I think that's time that we often forget is valuable in meetings. And it's often where a lot of the good work happens. So let's do that. Mariana, whenever you're ready. Thank you all for coming, and we'll get a chance to talk for about 10 minutes here.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Dawn.
Need to record this.
Right.
All right, so Dawn, we basically all hung out in the hallway in the parking lot, and now we're really sending people home. Do you want to send people home with a message?
Happy networking. Happy icebreakers. I hope you have a great summer. We look forward to seeing everybody in the fall. So.